Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our backyard. In today's video, I'm going to talk specifically about butterfly plants. In particular, butterfly host plants. But what you see here is a butterfly nectar plant, and you need both to invite butterflies into your gardens. My name is Crystal, and I garden south of Houston in Zone 9B. And we are not too far from the Texas Gulf Coast. And we have hot and humid weather in the summer. We have clay soil, and we have plants that just thrive in heat and humidity. And those are the ones that typically you try to look out for, because otherwise plants just really, if you don't get plants that are really well suited for your area, they just don't thrive. And so the plants that I share with you thrive in our conditions. Got a lot of bee activity going on the Salvia amistad back here. And this is a good nectar plant for a lot of butterflies. In particular, the plant you see here is lantana. And this grows gorgeously for us. This is a mounding lantana that's sterile, and that means it doesn't set any seed. It just mounds and flowers, and it's really producing a lot of flowers right now. This is a nectar plant, so this is something the adult butterflies would feed on. But today I really want to focus on those host plants that you need in your garden to invite the butterflies that you're interested in bringing to your gardens. So I'm going to put at the top of this screen a video that I did recently on butterfly essentials, the things to think about when you are wanting to bring butterflies to your garden. And the one thing that I suggested was a field guide. And I have a laminated field guide that I got on Amazon that is very handy. And this really helped me, especially when I want to identify a butterfly. That helps, but also when I want to see what in particular that butterfly needs for a host plant. And so you might ask, well, what is a host plant? Well, a host plant is one, for instance, that you see here, that the butterfly lays its eggs on, and the caterpillars eat and grow and create their chrysalis. So this is a life cycle stage that's needed in the stage of a butterfly. This happens to be a Flamacanthus. It's a wonderful nectar plant. It's a dual. It's a dual plant, which I love because it's a wonderful nectar plant when it blooms. Both butterflies and hummingbirds love it, but it's also a host plant to the Texas crescent. And if you can get plants that have a dual function, that is fantastic. So in my yard, I want to bring in the Gulf fritillary, which is a really pretty orange butterfly, and it's small and delicate. And I'm going to show you this butterfly. You see that it flies most of the year here, and its host plant is a passion flower. And this Gulf fritillary is about 2.5 to 3 inches, and this is its host plant. I love this vine. I've got two. I have incense, which is a hybrid. This you have to be careful. I have this in the ground and also in a container, but this does travel underground by rhizomes. You can get ones that don't. This one does for me. I just have to, I just pluck it up as needed. But this grows all along this 5-piece trellis. And as you can see, it's really starting to climb. And here we've already got a wonderful Gulf fritillary caterpillar. I don't know if that's not coming in very good. Ugh, sorry about that. But if you have the host plants, the females will come and lay their eggs. I also have a native host plant. This is a cotton leaf passion vine, and it has kind of fuzzy little leaves. This it will travel up, but it travels more horizontally, whereas the incense travels very much vertically. So I have these two passion vines, which is a lot of plants, and I get a lot of Gulf fritillaries in my garden pretty much all year long until we have a freeze. So as you can see in this same garden bed with my passion vine, I have this mid-level plant, this bushy plant, which is the Flamicanthus, and it is the host plant to this really small butterfly called the Texas crescent. And a shrimp plant is also a host plant to this little butterfly. You can see it's only about an inch to over an inch. So it's a little bit harder to see because they are a smaller butterfly, but I do have this plant, and I also have the shrimp plant. And the shrimp plant is just starting to bloom. This is another dual purpose because the hummingbirds and butterflies do love this bloom, but it is also a host plant to that Texas crescent butterfly. The next butterfly I love having in my yard is the pipevine swallowtail. And let me bring up that picture. This butterfly needs the host plant in the genus, it's pipevine, in the genus Aristolochia. And as you see here, and I've talked about previously in my videos, I have a nice area now of this gorgeous Aristolochia tomentosa. No, excuse me, this is the Fimbriata. And this is the white-veined Dutchman's pipevine. And by now I usually have lots and lots of caterpillars, and I don't yet. It is the end of April, and I don't have the butterflies yet. I am so worried that my really tough winter really damaged them over the winter, any overwintering chrysalises. This is the flower. It's very unusual, but they say it looks like a Dutchman's pipe. So I love inviting this butterfly into the garden, and so I have through the years developed this space for this ground cover, and I just love this. But I do have one more plant, and let me show you that. That is a vine, and that is the Aristolochia tomentosa. It is the woolly Dutchman's pipevine, and if you can see, it goes so far into my tree. I'm going to come around this other side because its leaves are huge. These leaves are just amazing to me. Oh, they're gorgeous. I just wish I had some of these butterflies. I can't believe how far the huge leaves goes into the tree too. I mean, it's way up there. This is fantastic. So I've got the plants, now I just need the butterflies. Another host plant that I have in the garden is this beautiful long hedge of bronze fennel, and that is for the eastern black swallowtail. It's a really nice sized butterfly, and you see that its host plants are in this family of carrots, parsley, dill, celery, and fennel. And I have lots of fennel specifically for them. And I usually get a lot of these butterflies. All right, next, we have a very large elm tree in our front yard. And this elm tree is a host plant and provides nourishment for 4 different butterflies: the question mark, the mourning cloak, the tawny emperor, and the hackberry emperor. And let me show you those. So the question mark I see pretty frequently in my garden. Also the mourning cloak. And let me get the other one. And these two I don't see as frequently, the tawny emperor and the hackberry emperor. But in Houston, excuse me for this, they all are supported by the elm, another tree that supports so much life. Our elm trees, and this is a tree of the neighbor behind us, and this is a live oak tree of a neighbor beside us. And live oak in particular is abundant in our subdivision. There's just live oaks all over. And there are a couple of butterflies that I see in our gardens a lot from oaks. Not the prettiest butterflies, but that's this juvenile's dusky wing and the Horace's dusky wing. And I see them all the time in our garden. I only have one yarrow plant, but in the Houston area, yarrow is a host plant to the painted lady butterfly, which is such a beautiful butterfly. And it's also the host plant to the American lady. And so I only have one. It's a pretty big plant, and it's just getting ready to flower. So my coral honeysuckle I've talked a lot about. I love this plant. It is a workhorse not only as a nectar plant. It provides nectar, it provides berries for birds, it provides shelter. It's also a wonderful host plant, and it is the host to the spring azure butterfly. Pretty little white butterfly here. Even though I don't have a field guide on moths, this is also the host to the hummingbird moth and the snowberry clearwing moth. And so I have a lot of hummingbird moths in the yard, and I know it's because I have a lot of this gorgeous coral honeysuckle vine. So over here by the fence in my south end, I have a blue chiffon rose of Sharon. And it's taken a long time to get started in front of it. I have the gorgeous John Fenwick phlox coming up. Look at that. Oh, love it. But the rose of Sharon in particular is the host plant to this gray hair streak, and I see these all the time in my garden. They're really small. They're only about an inch, but they use the rose of Sharon and also any of your rose mallows, which are the native hibiscus. They use those as host plants. So if you follow me, you know that I am a huge fan of the porterweed. This one happens to be the purple porterweed. I have a pink porterweed and a coral porterweed and a red porterweed and a dwarf red porterweed. Actually, I have 3 red porterweeds in different locations in my garden this year. And even though I have not seen this butterfly, let me show you. So the common buckeye is not what feeds off of the porterweed. It is the tropical buckeye, but it looks really similar to this. And the tropical buckeye, if you look at the documentation, it is a butterfly that's in the Houston area. I have not seen one in my gardens yet, but I do have a lot of porterweed if they ever do come. So the reason I had to replace a lot of my porterweed is because we had a very severe frost, and they are very tender perennials for us, and I only had one that came back. But maybe someday I will see that tropical buckeye. So I still have canna lilies, and I didn't realize, so I got the canna lilies for the blooms, and I didn't realize they were a host plant to this nondescript butterfly called a Brazilian skipper. And I am not a fan of the caterpillar because it's known as what's called a leaf roller. They really decimate the canna leaves. They roll them up, and the butterfly is really not the most interesting butterfly to look at. But I do have a lot of host plants. So I had these Brazilian skippers last year, and I'm sure I will have them again this year. I used to have a lot more milkweed, but my swamp milkweed died because I cut it back, and I had the freeze, and so I didn't know if our giant milkweed would come back, but I have had the giant milkweed return now beautifully, and it has already hosted caterpillars that have been munching on the giant milkweed. Haven't had a lot of caterpillars on here, but I've had some, and you can tell by either their frass, which is their poo, or the big bites that they have out of the leaves. So this is a giant, and I have multiple giants in my yard. The reason I like the giant milkweed I've shared with you is because these leaves are so thick. They're huge, and they sustain so many caterpillars. So I love this plant in the garden. Plus, it's interesting. I like how it looks. And it's getting ready to bloom here. This one blooms white. I have 2 different plants. I have one that blooms white and one that blooms purple. So I also have aquatic milkweed. Oh, it's down in here. It's all in throughout in here. And it is overtaken by my tree bed plants. You can see it's getting ready to start to flower. So typically these plants in this tree bed are not this large. And early in the spring, the aquatic milkweed is eaten to the ground and by caterpillars from that very first round of eggs being laid. But this year they couldn't find them because the plants are so large. But this is where I had planted my aquatic milkweed. And then I had 2 tropical milkweed volunteers. And tropical milkweed is very controversial because this is native to Mexico, not here. And the butterflies, the monarchs, migrate down to Mexico. And so if gardeners do not cut these back in the late fall, One school of thought is that the butterflies will be confused and they will stop and stay. And we don't want them to stop and stay. And so you need, if you do have tropical milkweed, which most of the stores sell, it's very hard to get other types of milkweed. You do need to cut these back, and we do. I don't have a lot of tropical milkweed typically, but we had volunteers come up, and so I did not pull them up. So what we do is we will cut these back, and I just don't encourage a lot of this, but it is a huge favorite of the monarchs. And then I have another native. Oh, the other thing I want to mention about this that is controversial to have is because if you don't cut it back and keep it contained, so many butterflies visit it that a parasite is transferred from monarch to then caterpillars, and it's pretty devastating. It's very disfiguring, and sometimes it's they can't even get out of the chrysalis. It's pretty nasty, and it's called OE, and so you don't want to mess with that. So I would highly recommend not having tropical milkweed if at all possible. And if you do, really research it so you understand that you need to cut this off. And then, oh, I see I got a little caterpillar down here on this native. This is a native to Arizona, not to us. And I think this is called Asclepias augustifolia. And I planted 3 and I only had 1 return, but they love this plant. And so I'm keeping it. Of course, it also dies back. So that isn't the issue. The issue is the tropical milkweed. Salvia typically is not a host plant, but this salvia was, and it is a host plant to a moth. And I saw its caterpillar out here just munching on this rockin' fuchsia. And I don't see them on any other plants or any other salvia plants, but it was all over this one. And that moth that we have in the garden is a sphinx moth, and I see that moth in our yard every year. So it was kind of fun to see the caterpillar. I wish I'd taken a picture of it now. And then I have one false nettle plant, and that false nettle plant is the host to the red admiral here. And I do see red admirals in my garden, but I've never really seen any caterpillars on this plant. But I only have the one. And the other plant, the other butterfly is the question mark. And you noticed I showed this earlier because the host plant to this is my elm tree. But I have seen question marks particularly in this garden. So it makes me wonder if this nettle hasn't hosted the question marks and I just don't see them eating the leaves. It'll get to a point where it doesn't have a lot of leaves, but I just thought that was the way the growth was on it. But I guess I just don't see the caterpillars. But in all fairness, I don't come out and look at this plant a lot either. So I have a couple of plumbago plants in containers right next to my pipevine ground cover. And in these containers, the reason I have them in containers is because they can get fairly large, if you will, and do spread. And so I planted them in containers just to see what I thought. Well, I do like them, but I haven't gotten them out of the containers yet. But they are the host plant to this little butterfly, which is really little, called the marine blue. He's tiny, half an inch to an inch. I'm really happy that my senna bush survived the freeze. I did have to cut it back. And this Asenna is a host to all the yellow butterflies that we have. So in particular, the cloudless sulfur, the sleepy orange, the orange-barred sulfur, the little yellow, all these orange butterflies, or yellow and orange, host on this plant. And I'm so glad that I still have it. I have planted, last year you saw me have Asenna alata, which is called the candlestick tree, and I have just planted one of the seeds because it froze and didn't return, which I didn't expect it to. So I am hoping I can also get that beautiful candlestick tree, which also hosts all those yellow butterflies. Right next to it is rue. And rue hosts a couple of different butterflies. One is the one I've already showed you, the bronze fennel, and that is the eastern black swallowtail. But in a pinch, the giant swallowtail will also host on rue. And interestingly, I've had both on here, which has been really a lot of fun. And I've had both caterpillars on the rue. So rue you have to be a little bit careful with because it can cause skin irritation. And another one I forgot to mention, but you really need to be careful with, is any type of milkweed. That sap is really, really bad. You've got to make sure that you wash your hands very thoroughly. Do not touch your eyes because it is severe. People have gone blind. Oh, there's another little caterpillar, monarch caterpillar. So be very careful around rue and milkweed. Not to alarm, but just make sure that you wash your hands very thoroughly. So then there's a lot of little butterflies that actually are hosted on grasses. And quite a few come, you'll see this Celia's roadside skipper. This is St. Augustine grass, hosts this, but a lot of different skippers. I don't have Bermuda grass. Nobody wants Bermuda grass, but certain skippers, and they're just small, nondescript butterflies, but surprisingly, grasses host the caterpillars. So these are the main host plants that I have planted specifically for inviting butterflies into my gardens. Of course, the numerous nectar plants that I have will bring the adults in because they need to feed. But to have lasting butterflies throughout the year in the gardens, I need to have these host plants. And having them has been so successful in having multiple butterflies pretty much all throughout the year. I think they say January is our only month that is pretty sparse, having any types of butterflies that fly. What host plants do you have in your gardens? Do you specifically invite butterflies and pollinators into your gardens? I'd be really curious to what your main plants are, your main host plants that you've brought in to do this. So thank you for joining me. I know it was a really long video today, but I have quite a few of these host plants. I really hope you have a great day today, and I hope to see you again soon.